The ground rules for the forum: we will have a 5-minute opening statement from each of the candidates. Then we will ask questions of the candidates, and they will have 2 minutes each to answer those questions. And we will finish with a 3-minute summation by each of them. So I'm sure you all know our two mayoral candidates, Mayor Paul Soglin, Alder Scott Resnick. Let me just say about Paul that he has been our 51st, our 54th, and our 57th mayor. And if you can do the math, when Paul decides to leave this time, there will be 2 interim mayors and he will become the 60th mayor, following tradition here. And Scott Resnick is the alder from the 8th Aldermanic District, and can we call that the Isthmus area for the most part? And he also has a distinction. He is the youngest elected council person in cities across the country that have more than 200,000 residents. So we have 2 very distinguished candidates here. And with that, I will invite Mayor Soglin to give his 5-minute opening presentation. And Paul, do you want to come up here, or do you want to do it from there? Why don't you come up here? We'll have you sit there for the questions. We'll have you come up here for the opening and closing statements.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I certainly appreciate the fact that you come out on a Sunday evening in February. So, why am I running for re-election? Well, let me start out by saying during the course of this campaign, I've been called old, though some people finally figured out that that probably wasn't a good way of getting the over 40 vote. I've been called tired. I've been referred to as gray and bland just this last week. So let me tell you about old, tired, gray, and bland. I think what is really critical here is judgment. Judgment to understand the consequences, the complicated nature of systems in our community and around the nation and the world. It means having the judgment, perhaps over 50 years ago, in October of 1963, to take a look at U.S. military advisors in Vietnam and saying, this is a really bad idea. But that's not why you'd vote for a mayor in 2015. You'd say, though, what are you doing for me lately? What happens when an institution like Uber comes to town? What happens when they come in with a business model? Do you have a mayor who can look at it, analyze it, and understand the consequences of that business model? That it is more than just a shiny new app. An app that can be used eventually by any cab company in the country or the world, so that you, the passenger, can signal to them to come pick you up. No, it's more complicated than that. It's understanding a business model which deceives the drivers. It first tells them it's better to make 80% of the revenue from the fare than the 40% that the traditional cab company provides. But then understanding the consequences of using your own vehicle, having the ability to understand the lack of commercial insurance, which puts everyone at risk, not just the driver, but the passenger and any innocent folks walking by. It understands the business model, which is designed purposefully to create an economic condition where the workers are self-employed and do not get any of the benefits of working for the company, and most likely it won't take 40 hours, but it'll take 70 hours to make a living wage for that company. Or perhaps it's running for office in 2011 and identifying that the critical issue facing the community is the economic situation of the city, which is unsound, and that that has a considerable bearing on the most important thing, the most important challenge, the important challenge of poverty and equity, despite the fact that my critics were saying I didn't know what I was talking about. So here we are after the 2013 report on race to equity, with significant successes, which we can get into later in the conversation, about what has happened in terms of unemployment, in terms of children living in households of poverty, in regards to the racial disparity that infects this entire nation, but is of course most important to us here in Madison, Wisconsin. It means dealing with issues of a national nature and not backing off to Bill and Melinda Gates on the question of so-called education reform, but instead working with the school district on out-of-school time and recognizing that there is nothing more important that a mayor can do in regards to the quality of life in the city than to make sure that we've got the best public school system possible. So with that, I look forward to the next hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Stockley. All the residents.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here on a Sunday night. I look around, and I was asked this question earlier today, what do I love the most about Madison? And I thought to myself why I came to this city from Wausau. I came here because Madison is a great place. And when you're from Wausau and you're looking at the rest of the state of Wisconsin, Madison is the one place where you can have hopes and dreams. You can have economic prosperity. You can come to this city for a great education and enjoy a great, wonderful way of life in our lakes, in our atmosphere, and our great individuals who are working together to make this city a wonderful place. And I look at what we've had done in our past. Our city has done amazing things when it comes to recycling, when it comes to protecting civil rights, when you talk about what bicycling has done for this community and where we've been able to go. And I look at the last 4 years, though, and I see, have we lived up to those values? Because I look what's going on throughout the entire nation, in places like Burlington, who are moving aggressively forward to a sustainable economy, to a sustainable energy-efficient economy. When I look at New Orleans, which announced that they ended homelessness for veterans. Not that they were planning for it, but they actually ended it. I look what's going on in Virginia Beach with education. I see what's going on in Oakland with affordable housing, in Miami with rail, and I see these are communities that are leading from a local level, that they're excited about the pathway forward, and they don't blame others for their mistakes, but moving in a direction of progress. Then I take a look at the city of Madison, where right now homelessness has increased 41% in the last 4 years. Where we have today 14 individuals who are sleeping outside in front of City Hall. And I find that absolutely unacceptable. I take a look at the racial disparities and the conversations that have occurred in the 1980s, the 1990s, 2000s, 2013, and I see what the city of Madison has missed in the way of opportunity, that we haven't found the political will to address these issues, even when we come up with plans to say these are steps that we can make and see progress. And then I see what the priorities have been from City Hall. We talk about a luxury hotel, that the city of Madison and employees have spent $1 million in the planning processes moving forward here. I take a look at what we do in travel from the mayor's office as a mayor who spent 174 days on the road. We're talking about sound judgment here in City Hall. When we have issues in the city, it's about addressing them here in Madison. I take a look at what really is holding the city of Madison back. And I truly believe it's a lack of cooperation. And when we have a county executive who's pushing forward on issues like addressing homelessness, but the mayor of Madison can't walk 100 feet to the county executive's office and ensure that we're on the same page, when we have issues of racial disparities and pushing forward with new initiatives, the city of Madison should be right there with the county. And when I look at issues like the 911 center, where the mayor is trying to pull political cheap shots at the county executive instead of coming forward with concrete solutions that make Madison a safer and more equitable place, that's an issue. We need to start talking about shifting our priorities. We need to be talking about what the major investments are going to be in the future of transportation, figuring out ways to reduce car ownership on the isthmus, making sure that we're focusing on energy and sustainability, doing everything we can for our lakes, and making sure that our major investments in the city of Madison is focused on economic development, is focused on child care, focus on these benefits should benefit everybody, not just a select few. I know the city of Madison can move forward in progress and be a leader once again on major issues of civic engagement and civic involvement, and I'm looking forward to having these conversations throughout the rest of the forum. Thank you.
Our first question is an opportunity to follow up on the presentations that have been made in introduction, and that is to address how specifically can we foster upward mobility in the city of Madison? How can we help families move up the income ladder? And Scott, will let you
start. When it comes to upward mobility, it all starts from a very early age. And when we look at issues like childcare and ensuring that every single student is entering the Madison School District on equal footing and a strong background. What it also means, is when it comes to job training, equitable forms of transportation, and making sure someone can get to and from work, these are all forms that we need to ensure that we can have upward mobility in our community. I look at different programs that I've been involved in personally to create jobs within the tech sector, to ensure that someone who had a background not as fortunate as my own is able to have the programming skills to find a 21st century job. We need to be looking at where our economy is changing here in the 21st century and ensuring that everyone has access to these jobs.
It was Nan who first introduced me to the fact that we were keeping track of how many kids in our public school were receiving free and reduced lunch. And let me tell you that when I left office in 1979, it was about 8% of our school population. In the next decade, it skyrocketed. Came back to office in 1989, and then from 1989 to 1997, and the following year, 98, it tapered and the rate of increase slowed down. Then had left office, and over the last decade, it skyrocketed again until I returned to office in 2011. And over the last 3 years, if you look at a graph, it has flattened out, and this past year it has dropped. We've never had 3 or 4 years of reducing kids in free and reduced lunch as we have recently. Why? Because I went to work the first day, and what did we do? We reestablished the neighborhood resource teams. I traveled, spent your money, looked at what they were doing in Burlington, and came back and said, we've got to have an out-of-school time program, because that is critical in terms of the educational achievement of kids, even though it's not academic focused, but it's very critical what those kids do after school, on the weekends, and during the summers. Went further than that and got refocused for this city on what we do in engaging private employers. And you all saw the award-winning program we instituted named after Wanda Fulmore in terms of summer youth employment. And just after we received the award, we were announced that now there'll be 650 kids over the next 3 years added to the rolls of those who are going to have summer jobs. Summer jobs inoculate kids for 14 months in terms of academic success and in terms of staying out of trouble.
This is obviously a topic that you are all very interested in. And my next question then has also been submitted by the audience. What specifically would you do to institute a 24/7 daycare center for homeless children? And what are your plans for improving the status of homeless people in the city of Madison? And you might be interested in knowing that a few years ago we had 24 homeless families with children under age 3. Today we have 74 families, homeless families with children under age 3. We all know what that means for early childhood brain development for those kids. So Paul, we'll let you start this time.
Another thing that I learned about in my travels was Parcel G, which is a project in San Francisco. Along the way, I found out the work that had been done in Phoenix and Salt Lake City, which are the real successes in terms of housing first. And so we went to work to develop a program to eliminate homelessness, to provide housing, to get beyond transitional housing, to get beyond shelters, and to provide permanent solutions with supportive systems, whether it's transportation, quality childcare, health care, or the critical components of education and job training. We have now embarked on a 5-year plan, $25 million. The council approved the first segment of it for this year. We've also got underway construction of the Rethke project, not far from here. The point being, there is no solution that is temporary. It has to be permanent housing based. The evidence, the conclusions that have been done by the researchers, the academicians, and the people who administer these programs makes it clear that unless you have a comprehensive program covering all those areas, you cannot effectively deal with homelessness. This is something that I said from the very beginning of this tenure term, and I will continue, and I'm so pleased that the council has adopted a commitment to end homelessness. We are committed this year to end homelessness for veterans, the chronically homeless, and we are committed to end, we're committed this year. I'll finish it in the next time. I got the done signal.
The reality is, homelessness amongst children in the Madison School District is going to reach record numbers this year. We've had a mentality in the city of Madison, in the mayor's budget, to suggest that we should bus homeless individuals out of the city of Madison. What we need to be looking for are community solutions. We need to be looking for collaborative approaches. Because when it comes to the funding for these programs, we're not going to be able to do it alone. We're going to have to work alongside our partners in the nonprofit sector, in our communities, the business community, and the county to really address the issues, particularly for families that right now are making some critical decisions. We cannot have students that are not sure where they're going to sleep at night have success in our own schools. We know this, the research shows this. We need to be talking about immediate solutions for this as an issue. It involves all of our partners at the table, but it's making sure that if there's a family that is homeless, that they have a place to go at night. Hopefully we can work and continue to work with our county and other partners to achieve this goal.
Do we have any more written questions? How will you work to empower? How will you work to empower and protect neighborhoods, especially communities without high-profile needs? How will you work to empower and protect neighborhoods, especially those communities without high-priority needs?
It's about treating each neighborhood with the same energy and emphasis as every other one. When you look at neighborhoods that have roads that go unpaved, when you look at areas that don't have strong sewer and gutter and issues with flooding on a regular basis, we're not serving each one of our neighborhoods. Now, we make serious investments in our isthmus and our downtown on the idea of economic growth. What we need to be doing is making those same investments throughout each and every single one of our neighborhoods. We need to be ensuring that there's strong transportation lines in and out, regardless of where you live, whether it's on the north side, whether it's on the far east side, and you're receiving the same level of excellence that we provide many of our isthmus residents throughout the entire city. Unless we go down that approach and embrace each and every neighborhood, we're not going to have a truly equitable community. I believe we can get there, but it's going to take focusing our major investments in the community throughout all of our Madison neighborhoods.
Throughout my career as mayor, it has been a focus on neighborhoods, whether it is creating a sense of place, whether it's recognizing the proximity of urban services to the relationship to our schools, to our parks. Solving these problems do not come from City Hall. We are the resource. We are the government that serves. But to solve a problem, let's just take the challenge of walkable streets and neighborhoods in areas that were annexed to the city in the 1950s and the 1960s and don't have sidewalks. Or take the challenge of the inadequate roads that won't support buses. Now we've got a difficult situation. There's the question of equity in terms of assessments. There's the question of encroachments into the public right-of-way, as we've learned with so many of these neighborhoods and their streets in regards to trees, plantings, shrubbery, even fences and walls. It's not going to be a cookie-cutter solution. In attending to neighborhood issues like this, there has to be folks in the neighborhood who define the problem and then come forward with their recommendations as to how to solve it. It'll be our job as a city council, as city staff, and the mayor to find fair ways of addressing these challenges. Thank you.
This is going to change the tone a little bit. In what ways can the city use new technology to move the city forward? New technology to move the city forward.
As you know, we've got an IT department. It works very closely with all of the city agencies. There have been a number of challenges in regards to new applications, new technology. The bottom line is this: we want to be not on the bleeding edge, but just on the cutting edge. We've already learned from experience that if we rush into areas too quickly and too soon, we may be buying equipment, we may be buying software from companies that aren't going to be around in a few years. When I came back into office in 2011, we were buying a system that cost millions of dollars, that had had a postponement year after year in terms of going live. We were facing a crisis which led up to this January as to whether or not we could actually implement. With my experience, we went forward, we challenged the vendor. I insisted that we stop payment, which got their attention. And instead of other governments that wasted millions of dollars on systems that didn't work, we are now underway. It's not perfect, but we are now underway. The same thing is true in terms of our efforts to wire the city, which is critical not just to our school children, but to Madison businesses. I've been working nationally with other mayors to do two things. One, I was a co-author of a resolution on net neutrality, which just prevailed this week in front of the FCC, which is critical to all of us. The second thing is we are working diligently and very hard to be able to emulate those cities which have created their own broadband access, such as Chattanooga. Tell you more about that later.
Back in 2007, the city of Madison was winning awards for the most innovative city hall, taking advantages of new technologies at the time and implementing them here in our city. We take a look, and it's not that we're on the cutting edge anymore, we're so far behind and just simply playing catch up. The project that the mayor refers to was a $4.5 million program that the city of Madison moved forward on. It still doesn't work properly to this day. We're talking about where other communities are going. And when we talk about fiber and fiber to the home, what the mayor doesn't mention is that's about a $120 million investment for the city of Madison to make. It's what we were talking about when we were talking about Google Fiber to the city. And what other communities found out is there's better technology out there that's cheaper, it's faster, it's equally as reliable. Things like 4G networks and LTE that ensures you get internet to your phone is the same thing that could be provided to the residents throughout the city of Madison. There's so many ways that new technology can make City Hall more efficient. Whether we're looking at things about how using iPads in the field could have a strong impact on how someone could be more productive in their day, or other technological advances that we now become accustomed to, whether it's city engagement or other forms of new technology. I don't disagree that we shouldn't be on the bleeding edge, but we need to be doing more than just simply playing catch up.
As we think about new technologies and implementing plans for the homeless and those children who need special services because they are homeless, we also realize that there are tight revenue limits that local governments operate under. So the question for you is, how do you raise revenues in such a way as to meet the needs that we are facing in today's society?
It becomes a two-part question, maybe even three. It's a very complex question now as I think about it even more. When we talk about growth in our community and in our downtown, we're no longer a boomerang city. We are a city that people are choosing their destination to start a life from day one, that they want to be in our downtown, want to watch young professionals not only reside here, raise a family here, move into the Madison neighborhoods, and see true economic growth in our city. Partly, that means that we still focus on issues of density. But it also means that we start working together, being collaborative with our other partners in other government municipalities. It means being collaborative with our county and seeing areas that we can have more efficiencies. What happens if we were to combine our IT departments and look at where we could go if we were working together for cost-saving, effective measures? The city of Madison is on a great trajectory. What we need to do is build for the 21st century to ensure that we have the growth and the models ready for action in the future. Now, when we look forward at the capital budgets that the mayor has put forward in 1 to 4 years from now, we are seeing our debt expenditures going through an unprecedented level. 14, 16, 18% in growth in capital expenses. We need to be conscientious of who's paying for these issues and these projects in the future. I believe that we have a future in the city of Madison that's bright if we continue to be fiscally responsible.
How are you going to get fiscal responsibility if you don't know what you're talking about? Let's get down to some real important issues. Busing the homeless, that was in the city budget. Scott, why don't you tell everybody exactly what the proposal was instead of twisting it and distorting it? There are two recognized ways of dealing with the problem of homelessness. One is housing first, but the second, which has been demonstrated to be effective and to work, is for those folks who are separated from their family and friends to be reunited where they will get the attention, the supervision, and the support services. The proposal that was in the budget that you read made it very clear that this was only going to be available if the individuals had family and friends and support services waiting for them. It was not designed as you've been repeatedly describing during this election. But the problem is also in your description of the capital budget, because you are the one who voted to load up the capital budget and to create the trajectory that we're on. You're the one who moved to advance a police station, to advance a fire station that both the police chief and the fire chief said weren't needed for 3 more years. And at the same time, I'm trying to figure out, how do we get the revenues, how do we get the funding to close the equity gaps? And when I recommended that we not spend $16.7 million on the Edgewater Hotel, you joined with 9 of your colleagues and voted to adopt that spending, which wasn't necessary, and we saved the people in this room, in this city, $17 million that can be used on other capital projects.
One of the strategies that cities often use when they're talking about fostering growth are tax incremental financing districts, TIFs. And we'd like to know what your thoughts are about TIF and TIF use in the future. So Paul, I think you go first on that one.
So let's finish off with the Edgewater. Talk about a luxury hotel. Talk about spending money when the data and the report said all you needed was $3.3 million. But then let's jump up to the modern hotel that we're talking about as part of Judge Doyle project. Alderman Revere and I recommended a modest hotel. Alderman Clear continually made motions, which Alderman Resnick supported, to make it a more opulent hotel. And that's how we wasted a year. So now we brought it back, and just a month ago, we took another vote to scale back the hotel, no TIF for it. And Alderman Clear came right back to expand the hotel, and guess who seconded the motion? So let's be real clear about this. Let's look at the record, let's look at the votes, and understand that I have been in office for a number of years, and I have never let you down on a TIF. I have never wasted your money. The city has been paid back tens, hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenues. And to this day, TIF districts like 25 are throwing off millions and millions of dollars which benefit this community. But the present project we're talking about, I'm committed to no TIF on the hotel. There will be, hopefully, an office building which will be of tremendous benefit to the city, and we have to replace the parking because the ramp is crumbling. But please don't accuse me when you continually voted for the project and voted to make it more opulent.
Now, let's first talk about the Edgewater Hotel. And I'll say, I made a mistake on that vote. I should not have voted for that hotel TIF. We know that now. But the lesson that I learned from this was something different. That we shouldn't double down and now just build another luxury hotel in the downtown for even more money. If we take a look at these votes that we're talking about, I wasn't the mayor of the city of Madison in 2011, in 2012, and 2013 as we sat down with city staff members and planned out the vision for Judge Doyle Square. I wasn't the person who spent over $1 million in planning, many months before we ever talk about any vote that came down to the city council level. When we talk about the votes that we took, when it was time to decide, should we move forward with a hotel, should we move forward in negotiations of a $20 million hotel in November, I said no. We've had enough negotiations. The promises that were made to council members earlier in February were not being held true. That what we should do is return that TIF money back to the school district and have a reasonable plan moving forward. When it comes to TIF-related projects, yes, they have been a benefit to the community. They've created increment throughout our entire city. But what we need to do is be responsible with our TIF, ensure that they're following the plans of the city of Madison, and ensure the projects that we're investing in are good for everybody, not just a select few.
In this area, we have had a very successful TIF in the Flom Road area, which has created jobs and businesses and is flourishing today and has been closed and has returned a great deal of money to this community. What vision do you have for the future for those types of growth-inspiring TIFs, which can create employment opportunities as well as revenue for the city?
I believe it's looking for the opportunities in our TIF districts that can have great returns for the city of Madison. You see what can be done with economic generation, whether it's outside of the isthmus with TIF locations that make sense. We do have a good track record on TIF. We look at what we can do, but what it also means is being responsible, making sure that we're having the right safeguards in place so the projects that we're investing in do have true economic growth, not just in that one TIF project, but throughout the radius and the foreseeable area. I do see TIF as being a great tool, not only for this part of town, but for the entire city. And luckily, we do have city staff that has been responsible for our needs moving forward. And I think we should be looking for more of those projects through our Economic Development Division.
You'll have to make a decision as to whether or not someone who provided the leadership for the State Street Mall, the Capitol Concourse, the original Civic Center, Monona Terrace, thousands of units of public housing, a variety of neighborhood centers such as the one at Warner Park, is capable of making these decisions in the future. Now, one of the things we're going to do with TIF is take advantage of one of the few new pieces of legislation adopted in recent years by the legislature, which allows us to extend the life of a TIF for 1 year and capture that value, which for Madison TIFs will range from $500,000 up to about $4 million, and use all of that cash to build affordable housing. And that's contained in this next year's budget, and it's something obviously that's part of our Housing First program. As we look at our TIFs, we have to ask a couple of questions. What are the externalities? What are the benefits that go beyond the district? And I mentioned before TIF 25, that's one example. But as we, for example, look at some of our downtown projects, we've got one now being proposed for the Anchor Bank site, which will by itself without relying on any other development, without taking money from other projects, is projected to not only pay back the TIF, but to provide a profit which will then go to the city, the school district, and Dane County, as well as MATC.
One more TIF question, and that is, the school board asked you to close TIF 25, and that wasn't able to be done. Could you tell us very quickly why?
The bottom line is, we wouldn't be able to do that housing, the $4 to $5 million that TIF would throw off in that last year for creating access to affordable housing. But we did offer a proposal that in effect is just as good. The school district's portion of the TIF would be $7 million. That's what they would get. So if that's the objective, which is to get $7 million into the hands of the district, what we are prepared to do is basically provide a loan to the district, $7 million, which they could then spend. And then after we close out the district, construct the affordable housing, the district would get its $7 million and pay back the city. It seems to me if we've got another vehicle for getting the $7 million into the hands of the district, and we don't jeopardize taking off the $4 to $5 million for affordable housing, that's what we ought to do. And that is still an option we're working on with the district.
Part of the reason why the school district rejected the plan that was outlined was the city was dictating the terms of what the loan was going to be and where the money was going to be spent. You take a look, we had these conversations in leadership. You take a look at what we could do with the TIF district if it was simply closed. Right now, the TIF district is still open, so we can start to pay for the parking out of that TIF district. If we close the district right now and start looking at Judge Doyle Square as a single project, to see and start negotiating on anything that moves forward on the Judge Doyle Square project, on that TIF district, without going into the details of where pieces are going. We've created one of the most complex projects where we don't see the benefits. Close down the TIF districts. The school needs the money now. I think we owe it to our school board members to respect their judgment in asking us to close the TIF district, and we should do so.
I'm going to read this question. What are the challenges you anticipate the Far East Side neighborhoods will face as a result of the proposed DOT project on US 51 Stoughton Road? How will you help preserve these neighborhoods' connection to the rest of the city? So how do we preserve East Side connections to the rest of the city with what's going to happen on US 51?
You know, the first piece of it is convincing the state what US 51 is and what it means to the local businesses and shops that are in that location, that we don't need a thoroughfare that's equivalent to the belt line on that location. When we're talking about what's going to go on, it needs to be a solid conversation with the state. No matter what, this is a road and a project that needs to be done, but ensuring that we have transportation that's available during that road construction, understanding that the value of those neighborhood businesses are important and critical to the city and the neighborhood, all become critical to the success of the Stoughton Road project. This is going to be a challenging fight over the course of the next 4 years. And it's going to take working alongside the state to see if we're going to have success there.
When Scott referred to leadership, what he's referring to is himself as President Pro Tem and Chris Schmidt, who at the time was the president of the council. Any conversations they had did not get transmitted to me, and I was not in those meetings. But when the three of us did meet, The only voice I heard was Alderman Schmidt saying that he was opposed to any early closing of the district. Now, you guys better get yourselves together. Let me know what you're saying, but let's be clear about this. The loan is available to the district in advance of the $7 million, and I am not going to jeopardize $4 to $5 million for affordable housing. That's cash that we won't have to borrow. Stoughton Road. I've made it very clear to the Department of Transportation that we are not going to support and we will oppose an expressway on Stoughton Road. We will not support expansion of the right-of-way unless it's met with a complementary contraction of the land in other places. Our vision in the city of Madison is basically a garden parkway, not a cavern, a canyon that divides both parts of the east side. We want something that can have economic development along the right-of-way, that doesn't intrude into the residential neighborhoods, and respects pedestrian and transportation access across the road as well as alongside of it. Now, this present Department of Transportation, this governor, are not very receptive to that, but we will hold out until we get the right ones.
State Street used to be a uniquely local business place. It is now seems to be mostly national change. How can we keep State Street unique? And then there's a second part that we'll ask as a second question. So how do we keep State Street unique?
This is a real difference between the two candidates here, and Scott's going to give me a lecture about listening. Well, I've been listening and working with the people who live and work and shop on State Street all these years, and the implication of that question is what I've heard continually. Now, what has happened is State Street has moved from basically 70% retail to 40% retail. If you want to take your family and friends and walk along the street on an afternoon, like missing teeth in a smile, you're going to have bar after bar after bar until you finally get to a retailer. Now, this whole world, this country, is under the onslaught of Amazon and of eBay and all the other mechanisms that go online to do your shopping. It doesn't mean we have to surrender. And in fact, we are doing certain things now which encourage the bars and the taverns and make it more difficult for the retailers who sell clothing, who sell household goods, who sell the kinds of things that we normally shop for. I had suggested and really would like to see a moratorium on any properties that do not now have a liquor license, so that no new liquor licenses are added, so we have time as a community to come together, discuss this, and figure it out. Part of the configuration of the street, with the way it's presently designed, is conducive to locally owned businesses because they don't meet the footprints and the floor plans for the big national chains. I desperately want us to keep it that way. I think Madison does.
You take a look at the type of retail that we're talking about, of what's left on State Street, and it reflects luxury retail. In so many ways, State Street is a changing identity. It reflects the values of many who are in the downtown and are now moving into the downtown. You look at how State Street is changing with the high-rises that are opening up, with the young professionals that are moving into the downtown. What I'm trying to get through to the mayor is that you should listen to the young professionals who are living in that area, that are deciding to move to that area, that are residing in that area, to let certain growth occur that reflects the needs and the desires of those neighbors. Now, everybody has a value to State Street, and we do want to keep the historic character of that thoroughfare. But what it's also going to take is to think forward about what does the next generation of State Street look like. And it's going to have to be more than just luxury retail businesses. It needs a good flow, but it needs to also reflect those who are moving down there.
We have a similarly unique opportunity in this neighborhood with the redevelopment of the Royster property. What do you think local neighborhoods can do to encourage local businesses to develop in that area?
As someone who started a business, now 22 employees, I can tell you it. Shop in those local businesses. What keeps local retail alive and what neighborhoods can do is when they see a business that's having success, go to that business. Go to the local coffee shop. It's why I shop at particular businesses on State Street in my neighborhood regularly, is to show that they have support. We have a strong economic development division that can only support in so many ways, but when one person sees that a local shop owner is having success, it encourages that second entrepreneur to show up at that location and also have success. It's all about who shops where, and in a time where the internet is growing, when it's so easy to purchase something online, it means shop locally.
Paul's Bookstore, Ragstock, University Bookstore, Triangle Superette, B-Side, one of the last places you can get CDs in the world. I'm sorry. If that's luxury, I think their owners would be very, very curious to know why they aren't making millions and millions of dollars. But that's my State Street, and I hope it continues. When we looked at Royster and we started discussing the future of that site in Cottage Grove, I got engaged with our planning team, and we do a lot of work with teams in the city, and I asked a question. Can we take Cottage Grove Road with its domination of design based on the automobile and the parking coming out to the street, and can we create an environment similar to Monroe Street, similar to Williamson Street, similar to Atwood? And at that point, all I was thinking was from Monona Drive over to Highway 51. So the city staff ran with it. They got excited. They took it all the way past Milwaukee. And the bottom line is this: we are now working on a plan to redesign the street to give it more of an urban feel, make it conducive for bicyclists and pedestrians, and then be able to work with any property owners who want to transition and get that kind of feel, to give it that real neighborhood touch appearance, so that we can play off of some of the, well, finish.
We have time for 2 one-sentence questions from the audience. 1 sentence only. We don't want to speak. So does anybody have a question? Yes, Brenda.
How would you hold the police chief and the police department responsible for or accountable for the 8-to-1 arrest ratio between blacks and whites in our community?
Everybody hear the question? How would you hold the police department responsible for the 8-to-1 arrest ratio of blacks and whites in this community? Is that a fair representation?
A couple of months ago, I think it's been about 3 or 4 months, we started doing some analysis of what is happening in regards to arrests within our community, particularly of young African American males. And let me just mention, again, your tax dollars at work. I've traveled a number of times for 2 different conference groups, one called Cities United, and the other involves the President's Initiative, My Brother's Keeper, where we are working with Philadelphia, we're working with New Orleans and other cities that all have this common challenge of working with young black men and getting them successfully into the economy and participating along with Latinos, Asians, and whites on a very successful track. Anyway, we did an analysis using modern technology, I might point out, and we identified the 25 places where the arrests are most likely to take place based on past history. Now, just curiously, the top 2 happen to be Madison hospitals. The reason is when there's been an injury or an attack, the police go there, and that's the address that's used. But 12 of the top sites, 4 high schools, 4 bus transfer points, and 4 discount big box stores. We then plotted the addresses of those who were arrested. And I won't go into detail, but they are really very confined areas of this city. We are now working with the department, with Judge Koval and the district attorney to determine how we can create diversions out of the criminal justice system and reduce these arrests, which the high schools have already begun.
Is about accountability. And to answer the question, we need to be looking back at what are all the systematic issues where we can be accountable both from the Madison Police Department perspective as well as the city. We release these numbers and not enough, we're not regularly releasing the numbers of these arrest records to the general public, so we only see this, in a further time period. When it comes back to it, when we come back to the issue itself, it's more than just saying that we need to stop teenagers from going to big box stores and stop teenagers from going to bus terminals. What we need to start talking about are what are the underlying issues where someone is getting arrested and making sure that we have pathways forward.
Brenda?
How does the Garver property fit into the plans for National Road and West?
How does the Garver property fit into Royster and Cottage Grove Road?
Oh, I'm waiting to see what the RFP process comes back with Garver. The one thing that I'm very concerned with is with the historic tax credits being capped off by the governor of what projects are going to be realistic at the Garver site. It's going to be a wait-and-see game, but I hope they are connected projects.
We're hoping that a series of sites, some of which have been discussed today, which is Royster, Garver, and then what will happen at the White Farm on Milwaukee, all lead to a coherent economic plan for the area. Obviously, we do have to wait on the RFP for Royster, but we're doing some analysis now in the Department of Planning, Community Development, and Economic Development, or whatever it's called. I just call it the Plan Department. Looking at job creation, how we can leverage, these are sites for TIF, by the way, how we can leverage TIF possibilities, and work with private sector developers, such as we've got at Royster, to not only create a great environment, great places, but jobs, training opportunities, and things of that sort. And then going back to Garver is one of the possibilities, because we've got a couple of very good proposals there that focus on employment-based opportunities.
Thank you. I appreciate the brief questions. We can do it. I got a couple of epistles up here that you would believe how much I did try to condense them. Okay, we'll have final statements now, 3 minutes from each of the mayoral candidates, and Alder Resnick will go first.
Thank you so much. And I really just thank you for being part of the conversation tonight. That Madison is a great place. It's the reason why I reside here. It's the reason why I started a company here. It's the reason why we continue to keep our firm here where we could go anywhere else in the world. But this is really a strong community. What we need to be talking about is what our priorities are going to be here in the next 4 years. What are the systematic changes that we can make to make Madison a better place? It's thinking about what the community is going to look like 10 years from now, 25 years from now, and 40 years from now, and what are the big investments that we can make in our community to set us down the right path for success. I thank you so much for being here tonight. I encourage you to continue to stay involved in your community and go vote on April 7th.
Well, one thing I will concur with that Scott began his presentation with and concluded is that Madison is a great place. We are recognized by 2 different outfits that use data as the best place in the U.S. I don't believe it. Yes, I do believe it. Well, you make your own judgment. We were also considered the best place for retirement in the United States. The week that that was announced, we were considered to be one of the 5 best places for young entrepreneurs entering the world of technology. So we seem to be doing pretty well. But we all know that there is disparity within this community. I came before you 4 years ago saying I would do something about it, and that it was a challenge that we all had to do together. I went and had some difficult and challenging discussions with some folks around this community about the need to change priorities, how we do our funding, to take on these challenges. Well, at the end of this last year, we got the data from just the first year and a half that I was in office. Same database that was used for the disparity study that came out in 2013, but was based on 2011 numbers. And from 2011 to 2013, we reduced the disparity gap on unemployment by 9%. We reduced the percentage disparity of children in poverty by 23%. We closed the income gap disparity for households by almost $4,000. We did it by creating systems that work, bringing back the neighborhood resource teams, working with the school district on out-of-school time, setting up employment programs, and my personally going to employers and saying, this isn't just about the city, even though we made reforms in city hiring policies and how we did everything from ban the box to how we set up oral panels, how we encourage and work with others to get folks into seasonal employment, because seasonal employment is the best way to get into permanent employment with the city. But saying to the employers, as we look through the hallways, as we look through the service areas of your company, does the complexion of the workers resemble that of the entire community? Sitting down with 100 black men in the Latino Chamber of Commerce 18 months ago, without any cameras and any attention, and committing $500,000 to a disparity study. Thank you very much.
Before we conclude, I just would like you to know that your elected officials really do care. We have Alder Denise DeMarb here, Alder Dave Ahrens is back there, Supervisor, County Supervisor Jeff Pirtle I know is here. Raise your hand so people can see you. And School Board Member Dean Loomis also came in. So our elected officials do care. And thank you very much, Mayor Sondland, all the residents. We really appreciate your time tonight. And thank all of you for being here. Vote on April 7th and vote yes for the referendum. Thank you.